everybody, it's Scott from HuntTested here, and I am at my favorite sporting goods store, Cabin Fever Sporting Goods in Victoria, Minnesota, and I'm here with Garrett, who has sold me way more archery stuff than I probably need over the years, and we wanted to do a short video on what do we need to do to get my bow ready for my upcoming elk hunt. Right before the season, I always like to come in, have Garrett check out my equipment, and that's one of the valuable things about working with and having a relationship with a local sporting goods store like Cabin Fever. So Garrett,
Absolutely.
So this is my Matthews
Absolutely.
Halon 32 that you sold me 2 years ago.
Yep, a few years ago.
And so in 2 weeks, I'm going elk hunting. What do I need to be thinking about? Like, as you're looking at my bow, can you give it the once over to make sure everything is tip top
Absolutely.
and ready to go for me?
Absolutely, Scott. So a few things we want to look at here. You know, being a bow technician, the first couple things I'm going to look at. Obviously, you see the string integrity. See if your strings are good, they're in good condition. This is the time of year, you know, pre-season is when you want to get those new strings and stuff put on. Proper string maintenance, keeping them waxed, all that sort of stuff.
So how often should I be replacing my strings on this bow?
You know, that's the million-dollar question. We get that a lot, and it really just depends on how you take care of them.
Okay.
You know, there's avid shooters that replace their strings a couple times a year, and there's
Really?
a lot of people that do it, you know, once a year, every few years.
Okay.
I'm usually, when I look at it, I'm able to gauge just by looking at it, you know, what condition the string is
Okay.
in.
So how am I looking here?
Fortunately, you're great at keeping the maintenance up.
Okay.
Your strings look nice and waxed. There's a possibility that the strings are stretched, but we can fix that and counteract that.
Okay.
But as far as the integrity of the strings go, they actually look really good. That's not a concern here, nor a complaint that I have on my end. The next thing I would probably start with to look at, you know, in a bow tune, there's so many things and different variables that go into a proper bow tune. One of the most easiest, simple things you can do is to check your knock squareness.
Okay.
Just to check that, that's another thing kind of along the lines of string integrity. We want to check knock square. We want to make sure that your knock's not tipped way up, or excuse me, way low, or tipped way down.
Okay.
Some things happen. We've seen it a few times where stuff like that gets messed up.
So would that be a sign of my string stretching over time if my knot gets out of square?
It can be, but usually, you know, if your string stretches, it's really minute.
Okay.
You won't notice it that much there. Typically, you know, it's either you know, third party put a D-loop on, or you know, maybe you had your first hand at trying to tie a D-loop.
Okay.
Stuff like that. We just want to just check it over and make sure that that is in proper alignment.
All right.
So along with that, we want to, you know, run an arrow down the rest here just to make sure that that is all square and level.
Okay.
If that checks out, okay, we got check 2, that's done. The next step I would probably go on to is going to be proper cam timing. So this Halon 32 is a dual cam system. It runs across concentric cams. It has 2 modules with stops. So we want to make sure that these stops are hitting appropriately at the same time on your cables. So if that checks out.
So how do we check that?
What we do here is, you know, if you're a really good shooter, you can feel it in your draw cycle. I shouldn't say really good, but avid shooter, if you shoot your bow enough, you should be able to draw it, and you'll feel that kind of, it'll become spongy. With either the bottom hitting first or the top, you'll feel a sponginess to it.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can take it to your local shop. Like here we have what we call a draw board. So it is a device that we can draw your bow really slow and keep it held back at a certain distance to check proper timing on basically the top and bottom cams.
Okay.
So that's what we do here. That's also in our labor tune here. You know, so that'd be step 3. If that checks out, we're sitting pretty. What we'll do from there is, you know, we'll have you run it through paper or do a bear shaft tune. These days it's getting really popular. A lot of people are running bear shaft tunes, and it's a really effective way to tell you what your rest is doing. We kind of already talked about the integrity of the strings, the cam timing. That's all bow related.
Okay.
We want to get into the next step would be, you know, your accessories, the rest. So we would run it through paper or bear shaft tune at that point. And what we want to see is obviously through paper, we want to see a good bullet hole. Want to see a little tiny hole in the center with 3 fletchings. Unless you're running 4 fletchings, that sort of thing. If that checks out, you know, then you could try bear shaft. Bear shaft is another kind of conventional way to do things.
So just without fletching at all?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, what a bear shaft essentially is, you take your arrow here, Scott, and you would cut all the fletchings off. Now, what I do myself, and a lot of people, they just cut their fletchings off and shoot it that way. I am a little anal retentive, and I like to do it perfectly. So what I do is I weigh out 3 fletchings of mine, and what they would weigh, and I take a piece of electrical tape, and I put that on the end of my arrow, just to add that weight to make sure it's the exact same as what my arrow would weigh with fletchings. And then we bear shaft tune that. And what that essentially means is you're shooting an arrow with 0 fletchings on it, and you want that arrow to group with your other arrows. You want to be, close to where you're hitting.
Okay.
And you don't want to see any, cant or angles in that target where you're hitting. You don't want to see your arrow tipped way into the right or left.
Okay.
And if you have that issue, then we're going to look back at form, we're going to look back at shot sequencing, shot timing, and we're going to go back and we're going to recheck this rest out.
Okay.
So that's kind of all, that's more on the rest tuning side of things. And if that checks out, great, we're almost done. I guess the last few things would just be, sight. Check your sight, make sure you're sighted in. On your elk hunt, you obviously want to make sure you're accurate. There's a good chance you're going to take those further shots. So we want to check that. And if your black gold here that you have does have axis adjustments. So first, second, and third axis on sights like this, we want to make sure they're all in line so your sight isn't tipped one way or the other or facing up or down to get those far shots and those angling up and down mountain shots. That's crucial for that.
Okay.
And if that checks out, Scott, that's that in a nutshell. We want to go through all that stuff. It'll take a little bit of time to do, but obviously it's worth it, and you've got your bow in tip-top shape for the season.
So how often do you recommend guys go through this process and have a professional like you looking at all of these components, checking them out, because these are things that you're going to maybe notice that I maybe wouldn't?
Correct. Scott, what I tell guys is, guys, gals, everybody, you can kind of tell if you feel like something's wrong, if you're a proficient enough shooter and you notice that you're starting to hit high, or starting to hit low, or you're hitting way to the left.
Feels off.
It feels off. That's, obviously one way to gauge. That's if you're a proficient shooter. Otherwise, rule of thumb, I say a couple times a year, bring it in, bring it in before each big season. If you're a big turkey hunter, bring it in before turkey season. Elk hunting, bring it in before elk hunting, that kind of stuff. It doesn't hurt to check it out a couple times a year.
Sure.
It could be as little time taken as a couple minutes just to make sure everything looks over and checks out, or something might change in that time. So we want to obviously go back through and look everything over. So it happens. Obviously, it's 16 strands or 19 strands here that are controlling a mini explosion each time, so things can change.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure, especially pulling 70+ pounds out of the bow.
So definitely worth having your bow checked out by a professional, especially before you go on a big hunt. It's really important to do that. So now another question that I have for you, Garrett, is one of the things that I'm always concerned about when I go on a backcountry hunt is I have an issue with my bow. I'm miles from anywhere, and now I know you've got a whole rack of Matthews bows. I know your answer is going to be, well, just carry an extra Matthews bow, but not everybody can afford to carry 2 of these around. Absolutely. And so what are some of the things that would be the 90% solution that I should think about carrying in my pack and just having on hand in case I have an issue that I could do a basic field repair?
Absolutely. So, obviously a backup bow is essential. It's a really nice luxury to have in case things like that do happen.
Right.
You're not out of the game at that point. Then you can go right back into your hunt. It's like nothing ever happened. But for people, that don't have the luxury like Scott's of having a backup bow, there's a few things you can do. Obviously, take care of your bow. Make sure you're not throwing in the back of your truck.
Right. So have a good case.
Have a nice case. Cases are important, especially when you're going on those kind of hunts, because they get thrown around and things happen. As far as things you can carry with you, Scott, you have a QAD HDX rest here. So this is a cable-driven style rest.
Okay.
What you can do is obviously the essentials I would bring is an Allen wrench. A couple different sizes maybe. Obviously, I kind of have one here on me at all times. It's nice to have.
Use it a lot.
It's all worn out and beat up. But anyways, take an Allen wrench and you can check some of this timing and stuff. And if something goes wrong or feels weird, we can adjust that out on the fly. So an Allen wrench is going to be an important tool.
Okay.
Along with that too, extra arrows and extra parts, screws and stuff like that. I'd tell everybody, if you can bring, the more arrows, the better you bring. also bring a backup pack of broadheads, bring an extra release, all that kind of stuff. If it's a major issue that happens with your bow while you're out in the field, it's tough because you're kind of dead in the water there.
Right.
At that point, then you're going to have to go find a local shop to try to fix you up.
Yeah.
But minute things to kind of look for is just like we talked about, just check your center shot there, check your your center loop, make sure that that's in line, and if that goes off, try to adjust it and re-sight in on the fly if you can. Same thing with sights. Sights can rattle loose, you can fall down, and parts can break. So it doesn't hurt to even have just your old 3-pin sight that you had sitting around for years. Just bring that with just in case. All that kind of stuff. It's really going to add up and make sense out in the field out there.
So if I'm on a backcountry hunt and weight is at a premium, right? It sounds like the biggest thing is to carry an Allen wrench. That's going to solve a lot of issues if I notice something getting loose.
Yep. And that's the biggest thing, just to go over and check over all your bolts and screws and stuff just to make sure they are tight, and that kind of stuff. If it's a rest malfunction, get yourself familiar with what rest you have. With this QAD style rest, they come with this HDX, they come with a little instructional DVD. And it's good, and we give them to the customers when they purchase them. And, that shows a lot of how-tos on that rest. It'll show you, it'll show you how to tune it and how to do stuff without a press. You can put these things back on or put them together without a press. And if you are well up and, knowledgeable on that, you can do that out in the field. And the same thing with the sights. There's know your sight really well, know it in and out, and make sure you memorize which pins are which. That's also huge. Other than that, just bring as much extra stuff as you can. And if you have to leave it in the truck, and hopefully the truck's not too far away from you, you can go back and get it.
Well, that's great advice. I feel much better prepared for my elk hunt. It sounds like my bow is in good shape. I don't have any excuses. Thanks a lot, Garrett. Cabin Fever Sporting Goods. Thanks for watching Hunt Tested. If you like this, please subscribe, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, can't wait to taste those back straps.